My sister-in-law's scheme to undermine my marriage using a DNA kit spectacularly backfired when her own son's test results unveiled shocking revelations about her family history. I first encountered my husband, James, in our late 20s, and we quickly fell in love. We wedded after 2 years of courtship and have enjoyed a harmonious and tranquil life together since. We were blessed with our wonderful child, Nathan, and felt like the quintessential family. I believed nothing could drive us apart until Sarah, my sister-in-law, opted to intrude into our affairs. Sarah and I have never been compatible. From the moment James introduced us, it was apparent that we wouldn't get along. I'm not claiming I didn't make an effort, but Sarah showed no inclination to reciprocate. She alleged that I was attempting to upstage her at her wedding because I was attired in a cream-colored dress. To be clear, Sarah deliberately selected cream-colored attire for all her bridesmaids. However, on her significant day, it became about me usurping her limelight. From that point onward, it was a ceaseless cycle of snide comments, insincere compliments, and trivial conduct. If I donned a new outfit, Sarah would remark, "It's nice," but I preferred it when I observed it in the boutique last year. If Nathan achieved a milestone, she'd diminish it by drawing comparisons to her own son, Tommy. Despite this, James and I consistently endeavored to disregard Sarah's petty actions. We desired for Nathan and Tommy to develop a close, sibling-like bond. However, matters took a malicious turn this past Christmas when Sarah resolved to instigate chaos in an unforeseen manner. For Christmas, she presented Nathan with one of those widely used DNA testing kits. Initially, I dismissed it. Nathan has always exhibited an interest in science and relished learning about his ancestry. Nevertheless, it wasn't a conventional gift for a youngster. That evening, James approached me discreetly. He disclosed that Sarah had made some peculiar, almost enigmatic remarks to him, such as, "It's high time you obtained some answers," and the truth invariably emerges. It didn't require much time for me to connect the dots. Nathan possesses green eyes, whereas James and I both have brown eyes. Naturally, anyone with a rudimentary grasp of genetics understands that recessive traits like green eyes can be inherited across generations. But Sarah had been making subtle, passive-aggressive insinuations for years, implying that James might not be Nathan's biological father. I was incensed. Not only was she unpleasant towards us, but she was also involving my son. We consented to permit Nathan to undertake the test if he desired, confident that the results would corroborate what we already knew. Nathan is our son, and the test would reveal nothing further. Nathan was enthusiastic about the scientific principles underlying the DNA test. He was eager to discover his lineage and familial origins, so we aided him with the procedure, and he completed the test. Meanwhile, Sarah's son, Tommy, had been keenly observing everything. Tommy, an inquisitive 14-year-old, decided he also wished to undergo a DNA test. Sarah's husband, Todd, believed it would be an enjoyable family activity, so they acquired a kit for him as well. What commenced as innocuous curiosity swiftly spiraled into a familial catastrophe. Nathan received his results a few weeks later. Everything was as anticipated. James was unequivocally his father. But then we encountered the shock of our lives when Tommy's results arrived. It was revealed that Todd was not his biological father. Sarah had engaged in an extramarital affair, and Tommy was not Todd's offspring. Todd was shattered. He had raised Tommy as his own, oblivious to Sarah's infidelity. To compound matters, Todd sought a paternity test for their younger daughter, who was merely 7. The results confirmed his gravest apprehensions. He wasn't her father either. Sarah's life was unraveling before her very eyes, and it wasn't a silent or secluded unraveling. The entire family became aware, and the repercussions were severe. Todd initiated divorce proceedings and vacated the residence within days. The irony of the situation was palpable. Sarah's endeavor to destabilize my marriage exposed her own fabrications. Tommy was the individual who endured the most. Nathan was also impacted. He and Tommy had always shared a close bond, and witnessing his cousin's suffering deeply distressed him. He began posing questions about why Tommy's father was no longer present, and it pained me to hear his concern for his cousin. Sarah's life deteriorated progressively. Todd pursued full custody of the children, endeavoring to curtail Sarah's involvement in their lives. Sarah was a despondent figure at family gatherings, with a pallid complexion and reddened eyes from weeping. She appeared vanquished. Sarah contacted me one day and solicited my assistance. She desired for me to converse with Todd and persuade him to be more lenient regarding the custody arrangement. She was striving to salvage what remained of her relationship with her children and turned to me for counsel. Initially, I was taken aback. How could she possess the audacity to request my aid after all she had done to attempt to wreck my marriage and instigate turmoil at every juncture? Initially, I disregarded her calls and declined to meet with her. However, as days elapsed, I found myself contemplating Tommy. He was the true casualty in all of this. Despite the fact that none of it was his fault, he bore the brunt of the anguish. James, naturally, cautioned me to remain uninvolved. He was adamant that Sarah had created her own predicament and would now have to contend with the consequences. Part of me was thinking about whether I can contribute some piece to the children in this problem. It wasn't their fault that their mother made awful choices. So at a crossroads, bewildered about what course of action to pursue, should I extend assistance to Sarah or allow her to endure the ramifications of her actions? What course of action would you adopt in my circumstances? Update 1. I wish to furnish an update regarding what has transpired since my last update, and I hope it sheds some light on the intricate situation we're navigating. Sarah persists in contacting me, and it's becoming draining. I anticipated she would eventually de-escalate or retreat, but she hasn't. She's unwavering. On one particularly dreadful day, she called me 3 times consecutively, leaving extensive, tearful voicemails. I could detect the anguish in her voice, but I couldn't muster much empathy. At one juncture, my husband, James, became so exasperated that he could no longer tolerate it. He contacted her himself. James seldom loses his composure, so when he called, I knew matters had deteriorated significantly. From across the room, I could hear his voice, sharp and strained, as he told her he was weary of her denigrating me and manipulating our family. Following that conversation, things worsened. Sarah's demeanor shifted once more. She commenced sending me numerous text messages, oscillating between beseeching my assistance and accusing me of endeavoring to sabotage her life. One moment, she was imploring me to intervene with Todd and mend their relationship. The next, she was labeling me as manipulative, asserting I was envious of her and her family, and determined to dismantle her marriage. Throughout all of this, my primary concern has remained the children. They are blameless in this entire ordeal, yet they are enduring the greatest suffering. I can't cease contemplating Tommy and Nathan. Learning the identity of Tommy's biological father must have been profoundly traumatic for him, and it's evident he's grappling with processing it. It's agonizing for me to witness his suffering without being able to alleviate it. Nathan, conversely, is uncertain about the unfolding events, but senses something is amiss. We've attempted to explain it to him, but he's still too young to fully comprehend the situation. We had a family gathering a few days ago, and Nathan expressed a desire to play with Tommy, as they had done previously. They used to be exceptionally close. Inseparable, in fact. However, upon Tommy's arrival, he was aloof, reticent, and barely interacted with Nathan. Nathan attempted to engage him in play, but I had to fabricate excuses, explaining that Tommy was fatigued. Meanwhile, Sarah continues to dispatch these lengthy, melodramatic messages to me. She messaged me yesterday, conveying that she felt betrayed by our family. I fail to comprehend how someone who has committed infidelity could feel betrayed, yet she still appears incapable of accepting accountability for her actions. It's invariably someone else's fault. Mine, James's, Todd's, and never her own. James believes we should intervene and offer support to Tommy, particularly given his close relationship with Nathan. However, he's also apprehensive about the repercussions of becoming excessively entangled in Sarah's predicament. We've been striving to strike a delicate equilibrium between assisting the children and preserving our own emotional well-being, but it's proven more challenging than we anticipated. Todd has initiated contact with James, further complicating the situation. He's been endeavoring to understand what transpired and expressed a desire to discuss it. James reluctantly consented to meet him for coffee. Upon his return, he appeared more conflicted than ever. Todd is, understandably, devastated. He confided in James that he feels as though his entire life has been a fabrication, and he's now struggling to determine how to co-parent with Sarah after everything that has occurred. Conversing with Todd merely intensified James's internal conflict. Todd is a compassionate individual who is simply striving to do what's best for his children, despite his dire circumstances. After hearing Todd's perspective, James feels even more ambivalent about how to proceed. He desires to help, but we both recognize that becoming overly involved will drag us deeper into Sarah's chaos. It's challenging to ascertain the appropriate course of action. Each time I see Tommy, I experience an overwhelming urge to assist him. He's merely a child ensnared in this quagmire, and he doesn't deserve it. Nathan continues to inquire why Tommy perpetually appears so despondent, and it pierces my heart that I can't provide him with a truthful explanation. The more I deliberate, the more torn I am between wanting to intervene and fearing being drawn into Sarah's turbulent world. Ultimately, all I desire is to safeguard the children. Tommy and Nathan deserve better, and it pains me to witness their suffering as a consequence of their parents' transgressions. I'm uncertain what the future holds, but I'm hopeful we can discover a means to resolve this without inflicting further harm. I'll continue to provide updates on developments, and once again, I express my gratitude for your unwavering support. Update 2. A considerable amount has transpired in the past several days, so prepare yourselves. It's been overwhelming for all of us, and I'm unsure how much more I can endure. First and foremost, Sarah elected to proceed with a formal, medically supervised paternity test. She was dissatisfied with the outcomes of the at-home DNA kit, contending it wasn't a credible source for making such a momentous decision. To be equitable, at-home tests possess a margin of error, and I surmise she was clinging to whatever vestiges of hope remained. However, the results remained unchanged. The medical paternity test corroborated the previous findings. Todd is not the biological father of Tommy or his daughter. Sarah merely excavated herself an even deeper abyss. I wasn't astonished by the conclusion, but any lingering doubt was definitively dispelled. Todd, in particular, appeared to be bracing himself for the worst, yet upon receiving the medical results, I could discern he was still profoundly devastated. He appeared shattered, as if the final thread of hope he'd been clutching had been abruptly severed. He had previously confided in James that he didn't anticipate any miracles, but a small part of him had harbored the hope that the initial test was erroneous. Todd became more withdrawn following the receipt of the news. Todd, apparently, initiated research after obtaining the results, and located the individual with whom Sarah purportedly had the affair. Todd confided in James that this man was a co-worker of Sarah's. He had harbored suspicions about their relationship for an extended period, but Sarah consistently dismissed them, asserting it was purely work-related. Todd now comprehended everything. He recalled Sarah and this man being unusually close, attending work functions together, and exchanging messages late into the night. She was perpetually offering explanations, reassuring Todd that it was innocuous. But suddenly, it appeared that all of our suspicions were being validated. Todd resolved to confront him. He tracked him down to his residence and entered unannounced. Todd, according to what I subsequently learned, was not in a sound mental state. He was distraught, enraged, and seeking clarification. Matters swiftly spiraled out of control. The man initially denied everything, but Todd refused to accept his denials. It rapidly escalated into a vociferous confrontation, and before long it became physical. Neighbors overheard the disturbance and summoned law enforcement. By the time authorities arrived, both Todd and the man had sustained bruises. Todd was apprehended for assault, and now faces prosecution. It's a chaotic situation. James had to travel to the police precinct to assist Todd. He posted bail, but Todd is now confronting significant legal challenges. He maintains that the altercation was provoked, but this will be arduous to substantiate in court. This entire affair is escalating uncontrollably, and I can't help but attribute it all to Sarah's decision to conceal the truth for such an extended duration. Todd is experiencing a breakdown, and it's heartbreaking to witness someone who was invariably so composed disintegrate in this manner. Meanwhile, Sarah is frantically attempting to mitigate the damage, but it's far too late. Todd has filed for full custody of the children. Sarah is in a state of panic. She's endeavoring to persuade everyone that Todd is the problem, characterizing him as a psychopath and citing the altercation as evidence of his instability and dangerousness. She's terrified Todd will remove the children from her custody, and she's lashing out at anyone who doesn't offer her support. Todd has been contemplating relocating to another state with the children to establish some distance between them and Sarah. He believes the children warrant a fresh start, away from the pandemonium, but I'm not entirely convinced. I comprehend his desire to safeguard the children, but separating them from everything they know could be more detrimental than advantageous. Legally, it will be a protracted and arduous battle. When I last encountered Sarah, she appeared as though she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were reddened and swollen, and she kept repeating that everything was collapsing, that everyone was endeavoring to seize her children. It appeared as though she were experiencing a panic episode. Even so, she persists in perceiving herself as the victim in all of this. At this juncture, I believe we have no alternative but to become involved. We're already entangled in this mess, whether we desire it or not. James believes we should support Todd and assist him with the legal challenges he's facing, particularly since Todd appears to be the more stable parent in all of this, which I believe is an excellent notion. I'll keep you apprised of developments, but for the present, we're simply holding on and hoping for a resolution that doesn't utterly devastate these children's lives. Update 3. I have a considerable amount to convey regarding all that has transpired since my previous update. First, let's discuss Todd and the man Sarah had an affair with. You're already aware of how Todd was apprehended after the confrontation became physical. Initially, we believed Todd might face substantial assault charges, but the man opted not to press charges. Todd informed us that this man desires to disassociate himself from the entire affair. He undoubtedly realized that becoming involved might exacerbate matters for him, both personally and professionally. Although this individual admitted to the affair when law enforcement arrived, he has since severed all contact with both Todd and Sarah. In some respects, that chapter of the narrative has concluded, which I believe is for the best. Todd doesn't need to continue contending with someone who manifestly disregards the repercussions of his actions. Many individuals have inquired about Tommy's sister and why I haven't elaborated more on her. She's similar to Nathan. She's been informed about what's occurring but doesn't fully grasp it. Externally, she doesn't appear to be as impacted. Deep down, I believe she's grieving in her own manner, but she hasn't expressed it as vocally as Tommy has. Tommy is older and more mature, so he comprehends what's transpiring, and it appears to be affecting him more profoundly. That's why I've concentrated more on him, even though both children are unequivocally victims of their mother's conduct. James and I are here to provide support to both of them, irrespective of who their biological parents are. Tommy's situation has deteriorated markedly. Some students at his school have commenced bullying him, which has resulted in altercations. It doesn't help that Sarah is inundating his mind with notions that everything is his father's fault. Tommy is aware that his mother was unfaithful to Todd and that Todd is not his biological father. Despite this, Sarah has informed him that she engaged in the affair because Todd was unkind to her. This demonstrates that she would rather inflict ruin and division upon her family than strive to preserve it. That is, in my estimation, an appalling thing to convey. Todd, thus far, has fought for his children. All he desires is to distance himself from Sarah, which anyone can comprehend, given how manipulative, deceitful, and unfaithful she is, continuing to inflict damage upon the lives of others. But I suppose it's intrinsic to her character. She perpetrated these acts because she's a reprehensible individual who would persist in this behavior indefinitely, hoping to derive some benefit from it all, to ameliorate her own self-perception. This is yet another rationale for why James and I believe a child shouldn't be raised by an unfaithful parent. It's the most detrimental possible role model and influence for proper development. We're hopeful Todd will secure full custody, because if Tommy continues to be subjected to his mother's influence, his prospects are bleak. His younger sister will endure considerably greater hardship because she's still young and doesn't fully comprehend the unfolding events. Over time, Sarah is likely to manipulate her and turn her against Todd. There's also a potential she'll ultimately emulate Sarah's behavior, believing her actions weren't that egregious and assigning blame to others. At present, both James and I are unequivocally aligned with Todd's position, and the children's as well. Firstly, Todd genuinely aspires to be a commendable father to them, but we also believe that neither Sarah nor the biological father is what the children require. Their optimal hope currently resides with Todd, and we'll assist all three of them in any capacity we can. Even the entirety of James's family, including my in-laws, are supportive of Todd. Sarah's parents are displeased with her actions. For instance, the other day, we elected not to attend a family gathering. On one hand, we had a prior commitment, but we also sought to evade the turmoil surrounding Sarah, and it was agonizing to witness Nathan enduring everything Tommy is experiencing. At the gathering, Sarah commenced her customary soliloquy, endeavoring to portray Todd as the antagonist of the narrative. However, my father-in-law interjected, instructing her to cease, as she was merely inflicting further harm and sorrow upon everyone. He gestured towards Tommy, who was seated across the room, and inquired, "Don't you comprehend the ramifications of your transgressions? Don't you perceive how you're continuing to inflict pain upon everyone, your children, and us? We don't deserve this. Acknowledge your errors and conduct yourself with maturity." My mother-in-law then proceeded to state that she hadn't raised her to behave in this manner and expressed the hope that her granddaughter wouldn't emulate her example. Sarah threatened to depart from the event with the children, but no one in the family endorsed her decision. My father-in-law stated she could depart if she so desired, but the grandchildren would remain. He informed her that both children needed to remain distanced from the commotion she had initiated and was continuing to propagate around her, and that he would return them later. Sarah departed, and the children remained to play. Subsequently, my father-in-law contacted Todd to invite him to spend the day with them, and he didn't hesitate. My father-in-law reported that the children appeared considerably improved, but it wasn't a miraculous cure. Nonetheless, being separated from their mother is the most beneficial course of action for them currently, as her toxicity is inflicting harm upon them, something no one in the family desires except, manifestly, Sarah. Sarah doesn't appear to be concerned about her children, only about how she's perceived and avoiding any personal loss. A genuine mother wouldn't employ these manipulative tactics to harm her children. Instead, she would endeavor to safeguard them from everything. However, a genuine mother wouldn't have engaged in infidelity against her spouse. Yet, here we are. Update 4. Presenting the latest developments concerning my sister-in-law and her children. More favorable times are on the horizon for this family. To begin, my sister-in-law discovered that Todd had been invited to my in-law's residence after her departure, and she was displeased. She proceeded to my in-law's house and confronted them, as she believes they should be aligned with her position, rather than Todd's. My in-laws asserted that they would invariably prioritize the children's well-being in this instance, and that if Todd was beneficial to them, they would offer him their support. This, in some respects, fueled Sarah's fury. After a bout of shouting, she seized an object from the front garden and hurled it at her parents' car window. To summarize, it's a distinct and separate issue. My father-in-law initiated legal action against her, and she was compelled to reimburse the cost of the window. I mention this because it bears relevance to the custody case later on. Todd's divorce proceeded relatively smoothly. There was ample substantiation that Sarah had been unfaithful. Consequently, Todd emerged victorious in the divorce proceedings. However, no one truly triumphs in a divorce, particularly one precipitated by infidelity. At the very least, Sarah couldn't extract any more from Todd than she already had. I wouldn't characterize obtaining full custody of the children as effortless. Quite the contrary. But I'll elucidate what transpired. Todd secured it. It wasn't facile, as Todd is not the children's biological father. He did, however, succeed after months of judicial proceedings. Some family members, including James and my in-laws, testified to Sarah's character. The car window incident didn't bolster her case, nor did the fact that the judge was amenable to contemplating awarding complete custody to the father rather than the mother, which is uncommon. The final decisive factor was the biological father's actions. This father merely appeared for self-serving motives, to evade paying Sarah child support if she had custody of the children. Sarah no longer possesses custody, so she has no basis to pursue him legally, as she has no child-related expenditures. I'm uncertain whether Todd can demand anything from the biological father, but he hasn't indicated to us any intention to do so. According to my understanding, the biological father formally relinquished his parental rights, akin to an adoption. I'd like to add that I haven't meticulously followed every facet of the case, so this is merely my rudimentary comprehension. The salient point here is that Todd possesses custody of both children. This has already begun to yield positive outcomes. Especially for Tommy and his sibling, who have begun counseling, Sarah is permitted to visit her children, but exclusively under oversight. My husband's parents, conversely, have unrestricted access to the kids whenever they wish, provided that Todd authorizes it, and the same applies to us. This arrangement has also proven advantageous for Nathan, who is once again able to interact with Tommy, as was the case before. A considerable amount of progress is still needed, but the situation is slowly reverting to a state of normalcy, which is the primary concern. Regarding Sarah, I am uncertain what to relay. I have not been in contact with her for some time. I have blocked her and have not received any communications since. She occasionally sends brief texts to her parents and James, but their connection is currently quite strained, and I doubt whether it will ever be fully restored. We appreciate your viewership. If you have not yet subscribed, we encourage you to do so and activate the notification bell to receive updates on further astonishing real-life events occurring in the world around you.